Hello and welcome to Talk a Good Game, and it's a preview of the magic of the FA Cup, or lack of magic. That's what we're here to discuss as West Ham United go to Shrewsbury Town on Sunday for their first FA Cup game under David Moyes. Gonzo, what's your thoughts on our opponent?
Well, firstly, I don't know whether it's Shrewsbury or Shrewsbury, but let's go with Shrewsbury. They're riding high in League One. Them and Wigan have broken away at the top. There's very little between them. There's a big gap between them and the rest. They don't score a lot of goals, though. That's the one thing I noticed when I looked them up. They score significantly less than anybody else. Actually, got to drop down into mid-table and Charlton to find anyone else that have scored less than them. So I can't see them suddenly launching an attack. Their top scorer scored 8 goals this season. So I don't think they're going to come at us that much, which is going to make it interesting for us because we like to sit back as well. So Joe Hart's old club and their goalkeeper, who is on loan from Manchester United, is ineligible for this game, so they've got their reserve team keeper.
Well, Gonzo has been on the BBC website. He's been on the league bit and the top goal scorer bit, looking for their top goal scorer. Tom, have you done the same, or do you know? I know you're a bit of a football connoisseur, if you want to call it that. So I'm expecting a bit more in depth from you.
I'd say the only time I've seen Shrewsbury is when we've been putting him in our ACCA this season. So no, I did have a look. I've seen obviously that they've been on quite a good run of form recently. I think they've won sort of 4 or 5 or drawn 3. I don't think they've been beaten in the last sort of 7 or 8 games. As Gonzo said, I think top scorer was, I think it was 9 goals. So great research there, Gonzo. 9 goals was the top scorer.
That's 8 league goals, I'm sure.
So like Gonzo said, they don't score a lot, but they don't concede a lot also. So they look like a strong team. It's the magic of the FA Cup. They're playing at home. So that they're obviously their thought with this is why not? You know, they look like a safe bet almost to be from themselves and Wigan to be promoted to the Championship this season. So they're in the sort of right frame of mind to go for a long cut run if they can do it. So I think they're going to be a difficult side to break down, but they could be an interesting one come the weekend.
Well, these 2 boys are not the only 2 boys that can look up BBC or Soccerway. Depends where you go. They're both half right. Tom's right. They've gone 8 games unbeaten. November's the last time they had a defeat. They've won 6 of their 8 games in that time. And it is 8 goals that a top goal scorer Payne has got. But the interesting stat for him is 75% of his shots do hit the target. So he is clinical when he gets his chances. Interesting team news from them was their last game against Oldham. They rotated a couple of players because their next fixture is a checker trade tournament, and in that competition you have to play 4 players that you last played in your league game. So the manager, thinking ahead, put 2 reserve players in their last starting 11 so he can rotate his team, put those reserve players in the checker trade and say, well, them 2 started the last league game. Complicated, yes, but it shows that they're preparing for this West Ham game and putting their full side out. Interestingly, though, you have to consider that this fixture will give Shrewsbury some transfer budget, as well as if they go through to the next round and they get a big tie, which takes place before the transfer budget shuts. It could allow them to bring in 1 or 2 decent standard players for League One and go on that promotion push. Now, Gonzo, as we've looked them up, do you fear them?
No. I only in as much as from what I've seen from looking them up is they may well be almost our type of team. They seem to like to play the way we play. They're not all out attacking. So that gives an interesting dynamic to David Moyes. Also, they're in their next game, the Checker Trade Trophy one, is against Blackpool, which is in 3 days. And they've got another one 3 days afterwards. So we moan about ours, or we might have complained, or well, West Brom do anyway. They're in a little run of hot fixtures themselves. So I just think the thing to fear for them is Moyes going to have enough in his locker to actually say, well, actually, these tactics from West Brom, I'm not talking about the big teams, but the tactics used against West Brom in particular, they're just not going to cut it here. We've actually got to go for it. He's probably going to have to play 2 strikers or something as well. So we shouldn't fear them. If we do, there's probably something quite wrong with our tactics.
What about yourself, Tom? Do you fear them? I mean, they are, like Gonzo said, a good form, a second in the league. By the looks of it, when I know about this checker trade stuff, is because I had a read of a Shrewsbury forum earlier, see what they were saying, if they were going to feel the weakened side. But it sounds like they're going to be taking it serious. The weakened side's going out in the checker trade because their next league fixture next weekend is against Blackburn, who are 3rd place. So do you fear them, Tom, going by what they've achieved so far this season?
I think you have to. Just simply because, and it's not so much, you know, they're a League One side or they're in good form. I think sometimes the FA Cup is, you know, can produce moments of magic like this. You know, you see your raw young English talent fighting for a chance for a place in probably one of football's greatest prizes or greatest, you know, I guess, league prizes or, you know what I mean, like cup competitions that you can win, in the most famous trophies in the world. And I think, you know, coupled with the form that they've shown recently, and their ambition to obviously be successful and take their club to the next level, maybe playing like a lower league championship side almost, you know, I think you have to respect them, because I think if you don't, and obviously we know with Moyes, he said that is not his priority to win this competition or go far in it. You know, he is focused more on the league. You know, they need to be careful that they can't come in and run riot, and well, not run riot per se, but, you know, definitely put our backs to the wall and produce a display, you know, worthy of beating us. So in my back of my head, I still remember that, you know, the Notts Forest a few years ago when Allardyce didn't care and he put out young players and we got absolutely smashed. So, and I'm not saying the same thing will happen this time, but I'm certainly wary of, you know, of what they can produce on the day.
I couldn't think of a worse fixture, to be honest. Going away to a lower league side on BBC One, they're gaff, they're in fantastic form. And Tom's right about them wanting to progress in the FA Cup and impress. But not only that, this is their shop window. The transfer window is open. They are, you assume, the creme de la creme of League One. They're probably better than their counterparts in that league, and at least half of them could compete in the Championship. Some of them might be eyeing up the Championship already, thinking, I wouldn't mind a move up there. This is where they impress. Going in a hard tackle against a Premier League player, taking your chance. That is how you impress. That's how you get your name on the radar of clubs above you. This is major banana skin, and the BBC can smell it a mile away. That's why we're on TV. But let's see West Ham fans smell it a mile away. Well, these two West Ham fans smell it a mile away. Gonzo, actually, I know I'm not going to ask you this question. I know your answer. Everyone knows this answer. Tom, for yourself, is this game important? We are, while we pulled away from the relegation a little bit, we're only 19 minutes away from going back into the relegation zone.
Yeah, and do you know what? Because we were on a preview when we were talking about the League Cup for Arsenal, so I can't very well say that I want to take this cup seriously. I have to stick by my guns and say, although it's not important for us, I do believe that we should still be focusing on the league. And I know you two, you know, cup competitions, it's what you want. You want to see us progress to the next round, and maybe that's the younger person in me saying I want to, you know, stay in the more, you know, or the financially beneficial league, you know, staying in the Premier League. And I just think that status to us means more than potentially going somewhere in the FA Cup this year. And I would rather us stay up this season than, you know, potentially go into the next round and you have a tough game against the likes of, you know, maybe Man City or something like that, or even in this game, just extra injuries, extra games where we don't need it, clustered fixtures, especially, you know, with how we've done this season, and obviously our squad not being too deep in certain areas at the minute.
Gonzo, is your blood boiling yet? Tom saying right off the FA Cup almost.
My blood's not boiling. Yours should be. Just called you old.
I'll let him have that one. No, even about the FA Cup, that's I know I don't like that attitude, but we'll come on to that in a second. Right, I've asked these two earlier to write up their 11s, because normally we say, what will you do up front? What will you do in midfield? Because we know what changes are coming. However, we don't know what changes are coming for this Sunday. Moyes has indicated that it's going to be a very weak side. However, since then, we've picked up 4 points out of 6 in the Premier League. We're now climbing the table a little bit. Gonzo, I'm going to come to you first. You want to quickly just run through your complete 11 information?
Yeah, I've got. Oh, hold on, I've got fake sexy on there at the moment. Hold on a second. Right, okay, I've got it up on the screen. If you can see that there you go, for all to see. I've gone. It's still strong. I've got Hart, Reed, Ginge, and Rice. That's your back three. Then central defensive midfield, I've got Oxford, Noble, and Lanzini in the middle. Then your wide players, Masuaku. It's, you know, it's 2 days rest. It's fine. And then we've got a little while until the Huddersfield game. On the right, I've got Ben Johnson, because I do think that some players will handle the run of games better than others. So I'm going to give Zabaleta a rest, and I'm going for Hernandez and Ayew up front.
Tom, do you want to run through your 11, please, and your formation?
Yeah, I'm not on the pitch scale of you. This was a simple text to Gio earlier on. I've gone with a more attacking one because I don't think we can play 3 at the back against or with the wing backs. I'd like to see something different. So I've gone with a 4-2-3-1. I've gone Joe Hart in goal. Similar to Gons, I've got Johnson on the right, Rice and Collins at centre back, Masuaku at left back. I've gone for Oxford and Obiang in the middle, Arnie Keena and Haksabanovic. Maybe he's playing as wingers or in behind Hernandez. The reason I would say Hernandez is just because I want to see him potentially score a couple of goals against lower league opposition. He's out, not really in any sort of form at the minute. He's not really had a fair crack of the whip in the last few games, so I think it's his time to shine. And obviously, being the FA Cup, you would like to see a couple of youngsters come in and potentially, like I said, against a League One opposition that they can impress a little bit more than they did, say, against Arsenal a couple of weeks ago.
Why the formation change, Tom? Do you not think Moyes should be keeping it consistent in order so that they sort of perfect Moyes' system?
I do. But I thought, what we sort of said in the past couple of weeks was we have to change formation to, adapt to our opponents sometimes. And depending on how much Moyes wants to go for this, whether he wants to be attacking or whatever, I just think that, this could be a game to maybe deploy a different system or just to see what other players can offer in a different type of thing. And I think maybe 3 at the back and maybe 2 defensive. It depends how high, I guess, those wing backs play up against Shrewsbury. They could be very attacking. They could be overlapping. They could be the same thing. But I think without the likes of Cresswell and Masuaku, maybe not, obviously Cresswell being injured, not having that, link between the two of them, how good they are at, being aware of where another one is. I just think now's the time for just maybe a little bit of change and just to see something different before we go into our next league game.
Gonzo, if he's fit, you've got him in your team, I've got him in mine. Is an absolute must that Reece Oxford starts?
I think it'd be scandalous if he's not involved, bearing in mind we have dragged him, what sounds like kicking and screaming, away from his loan, which has just started to go really, really well for the lad. We've either brought him back to sell him or we have to take everyone at their words, which is we've brought him back so as we can have a look at him and so as he can play some games. He has to play. If he doesn't play now, he won't play.
What about Gonzo? 2 up front you've gone for, same as me as well, Ayew and Hernandez. Is this where you could argue that there's a shirt up for grabs for the Huddersfield game between those two? One shirt, you 2 are up front, someone's grabbing it, unless Carroll's obviously got it by default, but...
Yeah, I think Carroll probably has got it. I would, under normal circumstances, I would say I would agree with you, but I think they are both right in they're not just on the shop floor, they're in the front window of a shop with a big for sale sign around them. So I think either one of them could go at any point, and probably more likely to be Ayew because his wages are slightly less prohibitive than Hernandez, and we know that Ayew is probably wanted by Swansea as well. So, yeah, it's a chance, but I don't think Moyes sees either of them as long-term options for West Ham, and I do get the impression Moyes is thinking long-term and longer than these 6 months.
Well, my 11 is Hart in goal, which we all know is happening. Back 3, Ginge, Rice and Cresswell, if he's fit. If not, Kiate is going in there for me. Reece Oxford, right wing back, I think it's important we have a second option to Zabaleta. Them 2 have gone with Ben Johnson. I've gone with Reece Oxford for that one. He's played there in Germany. He should fit there. Masuaku on the left. Quinna, Noble and Lanzini centre midfield. And then Hernandez and Ayew up front. We all seem to be taking this FA Cup seriously anyway. Tom, will David Moyes take it seriously? And is this type of game where we should be judging David Moyes' long term, if he's got a long term at West Ham?
I mean, it's a really good question because I think in his mind he's still thinking short term plan, and I think his short term plan has been to keep the club up. So on the one hand, obviously we'd all like to see long-term success. I would love for us. It's not like I don't want us to win the FA Cup or I don't want us to push on to the next rounds. It's more the fact that I'm worried, and I think in David Moyes' mind is that short-term safety. So no, it doesn't bother me for his long-term success. If he was to get it next season and he does the same thing in the competition, then fair enough. Then obviously, you have to be worried about what his long-term plan is for West Ham. And I think obviously he's made it clear during the last week or so, I think in an article somewhere or an interview, that he wasn't going to be taking it seriously. He wasn't going to be fielding his strongest 11. But at the same time, I think even our reserve players or bench players or whoever he plays, some of them are good enough to play. Even our youth players shouldn't be really struggling against this League One side. We know the likes of Martinez, he's played down there with Oxford and so on. So, this is a potential time for some of those young players to shine, and it could actually end up helping David Moyes. But again, to answer the question, in his mind, his short-term plan is to keep the club up, and I don't think it really should affect whether he stays or goes in the long term.
Speaking about younger players at a lower level, Gonzo, Burke and Cullen may be back for this one if they're back from Bolton. Would you stick them in if they're back? I know we did our team, but would you put them in, or is that a case, no, you haven't been here, stick with what you've had?
Absolutely that. Nothing against them. They've not even trained with anyone. They've to bring them back and thrust them into that. At least Johnson's already been. I picked 2 that you would consider not to be senior players. So I've picked Oxford and I've picked Johnson. At least Oxford has been in the club for a while. He's come back and he's been playing Bundesliga football. Johnson's been on the bench a few times. He's been training with the first team, so he's sort of ready to go in that sense. They've been in Bolton for ages. Their comeback is just a little bit too soon. And I do want to take it seriously because resting for me is bringing a couple of youngsters in, but still keeping a core of first team squad and established players, whilst giving the old fella, like Zabaleta, a rest. So no, leave them be for the moment.
Before I ask them how they're feeling about this game, we want to know what your teams would be, because everyone's going to have a different opinion on this one. Some will want to see just under 23s plus Joe Hart, and some will want to see the full strength squad and a mixture like us three have gone for. Drop in the comments below, come onto our forum at hammerschat.com and let us know. But Tom, are you feeling confident for this slippy banana tie?
I mean, we should be. Like I said at the start, I'm wary of them. My prediction, when I give it in a minute or whatever, but I will kind of explain more, I guess, of what I'm feeling about the tie. But I mean, I'm not overly confident, but I'm not overly worried at the same time. It's quite a weird one, but that will reflect in my prediction in a minute.
Gonzo, what about yourself? You feeling confident, or are you a bit scared?
I'm not scared. There's nothing in David Moyes' record at any of his previous clubs that says he's going to go for a cup run. Okay, there's nothing in our experience of David Moyes, to suggest he is going to go and attack a team. So from a manager point of view, maybe I'm not as confident as I should be. However, as good as Shrewsbury might be in their league, Lanzini should be the best player they've ever played against. Their centre forward should not be able to lay a glove on Winston Reid. Masuaku should look like a PlayStation player to them when he plays up against them. Javier Hernandez should be moving and peeling off players in the box and creating a yard of space for himself. And their central defender should be looking around thinking, what's going on? Andre Ayew is a £20 million player, whether you think he's worth that or not. That's what it is. Mark Noble should be able to dominate a game. And from all those things, really, we have... as I say, they're in a run of a lot of fixtures themselves as well. I think we should be going there and we should be confident about it.
Yeah, we should be. The only thing that worries me is David Moyes' comments, pure and simple. He was even making excuses of why we shouldn't be in the next round. Never mind about this game. He said, we go through, we play the FA Cup, then we've got Crystal Palace on the Tuesday. So he was trying to suggest why we shouldn't even be in the next round. That's what worries me. I don't think we're going to see a spanking at Forest like we had at Forest under Allardyce, but I wouldn't be surprised if we've got 5 or 6 players in there that have not played in a senior game this season for West Ham. But this is part of the bigger picture. David Moyes just has no players. There is no... When we all sat down to your team, I assume you two were the same. You thought, what senior player has not played recently? You put in Ayew, and you thought, oh, well, that's it. There's no one else. There's no other players. The players we mentioned in my team, in particular Caswell, Collins, Noble, they're all just back or coming back from injury. We've all got that in our team as well. That's not a good sign, and that's what worries me. However, as Gonzo said, on paper, we should be winning this game. But football's not played on paper, as I always say. So, Tom, what is your mystery score prediction that's going to reflect your confidence?
2-2. The good old 2-2. I think it'll be a replay. I think it will go back to London Stadium. I just, like you said, I don't think that he's going to be willing to play more than he needs to in certain positions, especially with senior players. I don't think he wants to risk the injury, and I almost think it's going to show to his comments of what he said about the next round and about the cluster of fixtures that we'll end up getting a replay or something in amongst it. So Shrewsbury aren't to be sniffed at. They aren't to be saying that they're not a good team. But I just think that come the day and come maybe some of those young players being in there, I think maybe they could face a tough test. So I'm going to say 2-2 and a replay at the London Stadium.
Tom, is that the worst result for David? Is that actually worse than a defeat for David Moyes in a way?
Well, obviously it is, yeah, because you do add to that fixture list. You do add to that cluster fixture, and then obviously the next round comes quicker than if you have the break in between. So yeah, it's worse for Moyes, especially if they've picked up injuries as well for this weekend's game. And it really will be having to dip into the transfer market to pick up new players. So for Moyes, this really, like I said, it's either he loses and he's happy, or he wins and he's not happy. It's so difficult to judge how he's going to feel with this one, but he's not going to be a very happy man if it's a replay.
Gonzo, what's your score prediction?
Yeah, just before I do, that'd be hugely ironic, wouldn't it, if we got a draw because he didn't show enough ambition and didn't want to win the cup tie because of the fixture congestion, and inadvertently we got another fixture off the back of it. It probably shows why he should. The fact that we only had one shot was a free kick by Cresswell against Arsenal when we played in that, and that what was really their reserve team should be frightening. However, I think he's got to go for it. I don't think he's going to. People understand the negative tactics against Chelsea and Man City and everybody else and Tottenham. But I think he knows he ain't going to get away with it against Shrewsbury. And I think we're going to win 2-0.
I'm going to go 2-1, despite it being quite negative so far. What I do think is what me and Tom spoke about, Shrewsbury players being up for it. This is their chance to shine. This is the chance to shine for the West Ham players as well that don't usually play, our youngsters, etc. This is their chance to say to David Moyes, I can do this. There's spaces on the bench for the Huddersfield game. Maybe not in the first 11, but on our bench, because of our injuries, there's under-23s going on there. This is for them to say, I want on that bench. If Burke is back and he plays Burke in Oxford, them two are almost competing with each other to get on the bench, to get in behind Declan Rice in the pecking order, etc. So for that, I think we'll win 2-1. I think the 4 points during the week is massive. David Moyes' comments was made before the West Brom game. It has to be put into context, and that was he had West Brom, then Spurs, who he probably was putting 0 points against. He's got a point from that. We are now creeping up the table. He's probably looking at this as a whole different perspective, hopefully, because for me, the FA Cup is magic, and hopefully we'll see some on Sunday. Certainly, if you're a neutral, you're probably expecting some bloody good magic when you're watching Shrewsbury against this West Ham side. But let us know what you think at home. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it as well. And comment subscribe if you're new around here. We'll be back on Sunday with our review of the game, and we'll probably have a video tomorrow night, so keep your eyes on the channel, which is going to be based on transfers, all the latest rumours and opinions on it as well. But until then, we'll see you shortly.